So who wants to cook carbonara with me? Okay, so at the beginning of a story, the first thing you need to do is to, first of all, you want to elevate the stakes, okay? And so carbonara is my favorite dish, so elevating the stakes. Plus I'm Italian, okay? I'm Italian, I need to do good carbonara. Not even that, I'm from Rome. We invented carbonara in Rome. So if I give you the false recipe, I'm really making a big, big blunder of myself, okay? So first step, elevate the stakes. Then introduce a problem, okay? I know that the first thing you're gonna do when I ask you to make a carbonara is go to your fridge, open the fridge and grab the bacon. Wrong, okay? It's not about pork belly, it's about pork cheek. It's guanciale. And so the first thing you do is here it's bacon. Sorry, well, here is guanciale, and here is bacon. And so you start going, you see up and down, you introduce problems. The second problem, again in the fridge. You can open the fridge door, grab Parmigiano cheese. Wrong. Not Parmigiano, it's pecorino. Pecorino Romano, okay? It's another type of cheese, it's a goat cheese. It's not the other type of cheese. And so you see there's different problems. And then you're gonna go with the eggs. But the problem is that you're gonna use too many eggs. Okay. You want one full egg for the plate, and then you want only the red of the egg, one per person. Okay. If you have more than 5 or 6 people, you add another full egg. Okay. And now you're ready to cook. But I know what you're gonna do. You are going to put the egg in the pan and you're going to overcook the egg like it's scrambled eggs. Don't do that. The big idea of carbonara is that it's just a question of timing. You have the pork cheek cooking here. You have the pasta cooking here, and you have a saucer here. You have a pan here with the egg already mixed with a little bit of pecorino. You get the pasta out. Not even 5 seconds and it's in there. The pasta starts cooking the egg into a cream. Then you add the pork belly on top. You mix everything, and that act of mixing cooks the egg perfectly. You never cook the egg in the pan. This is the big idea. Then is a summary. Today you learned it's not pecorino, it's not Parmigiano, it's pecorino. It's not bacon, it's pork belly, and it's not too many eggs. There's a lot of eggs, but you separate the white from the red. Next time, next time, Grisha. Thank you very much. Okay, and this is, if you look at this graph, you can look at it in many different ways. If you're still familiar with your theater school, this is Act 1, this is Act 2, and this is Act 3. And if you think about movies, this is the beginning of Star Wars or the beginning of The Matrix, like, oh, I don't understand, follow the white rabbit, take the blue, red pill, then you get all the problems, you need to learn jujitsu, you need to fight the Smiths, etc., and then at some point you kind of figure out you can stop bullets, and then you actually end the movie with taking over from the machines and so on and so forth. Or like in this case, your job here is to elevate the stakes. Your job here is to highlight all of the conflict situations, all of the problems. A story without problems, a story without villains is boring. Harry Potter without Voldemort, pretty boring. Batman without the Joker, pretty boring. And then you end up on a high, a big idea, something that people will remember. You summarize it immediately, and you maybe even had a to-do at the end. This as a framework is derived from the hero's journey. It is like this. You can challenge me. It's always like this. The beginning is always a formula. The end is always a formula, more or less. You can mix things around if you feel like Quentin Tarantino, starting from the end, giving flashbacks, etc. But it's still the same formula, even if you switch it around. And if you are super expert, you can also start from the big idea and mix it as much as you like. you don't need to, it works like a charm. So for me here, there was the story about the farmer, and these were all the ups and downs of good models, bad models, and so on and so forth. The big idea was Martha's story, and you remember the summary and the ending. So that's the answer to the question. Obviously, we can talk at length about this, because behind this there's the 17 steps of the hero's journey, and behind the 17 steps of the hero's journey, there's hundreds of archetypes that you can tap into to have different moments, different emotional moments also in your presentations. But this is exactly what I designed next, and what you actually see here, but not here. This is the flow of this presentation that you just saw. Like, all of this is the flow of the presentation that you just saw. So the beginning, all the different 5 stories, and then how it ends. The other part that I already mentioned is how analog it all is. And I think a lot of times when we think about we need to create a presentation, we need to create a talk, we just go to the computer. And this is something that I invite you to avoid as much as possible, because the ideas won't come there, and actually just to be the act of standing in front of a whiteboard will make it much, much easier for you. And then to start having to write down this timeline is relatively easy. To figure out that you're not giving yourself, you're not sort of hiding stuff to yourself, it's pretty hard. So I would advise to spend a lot of time on the timeline. And then it's a process of cutting, because we always have too much material. Most probably the version 500 of the presentation that you just saw lasts 5 minutes and has one story, and it's much more punchy than the 40 minutes that you went through.
Could you? So on the right diagram, yeah, I'm like do that super fast elevator, like bam 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 bam. This is what teach. If this story teaches you that, da da da. Could you do the Pepperino story, but actually what you did say in your 40-minute talk, but just show it on the?
Sure. I can even show it here. Maybe it's easier. Okay. So I'm Matteo, coach people, tell stories. There's the story of the farmer and the horse here. And then I start to elevate the stakes, and I start saying, well, this is the most vulnerable I've ever been. And I also say, well, I'm going to compress 47 years in 40 minutes. And so I'm trying really to make it an emotional thing. But I cannot spend too much time. This is an intro, okay? It's just the beginning of the song. You're kind of going to like it or not. But if I go on telling you a lot about, and the process I went through is so and so, and I grew a beard while doing it, and so on, it's going to be pretty boring. So I want to go as quickly as possible into the first story. But before I tell you what I'm going to tell you, I need to introduce it. Otherwise, you have no map. So I tell you there are 5 personal stories. Okay, so I give you a map, and you always know, oh, this story is boring, but there's only another 4, okay? Or I can, yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like, okay, well, there's 5 stories I need to pee. I'm going to, pee at 2.5. Okay, this is like giving your audience a guide and a way of seeing things. And I actually already, at this point, we were at this slide over here where I already gave you the bam, bam, bam. I already gave you the plan. Whoop, this one. So basically, if you knew the presentation already, you say, it's that presentation, I can leave. And then immediately, I went into the, let's go back to where we were. And immediately, I go with a high point. And the high point that I had for the beginning of the presentation is, I have all of this agency, I have all of this power, I took over the school. With a K, because that's more edgy. Okay, and this is the uplifting story. But then our guide is, there is always a mantra in a good presentation. And the mantra of this presentation is it a blessing or a curse? Is it a blessing or a curse? Is it a blessing or a curse? So I can tell you this story about school, and then I have the first learning that I'm going to connect here, the let go. And so I've decided, since in the end I have let go, make space, and decide, I decided this is a good story for letting go of fear speaking. Okay, so this is how it's going to be. And I have, as I told you, many stories about education, freedom, etc. I decided this one is, for now, the punchiest. But then I need to give you immediately a problem, okay? Because otherwise it's too many uplifting stories. And anyway, in the story there's a problem with the stoner kid and the problem with the nerves and so on. So there's always an enemy to what I'm going to talk about. Then we go down here and we have the bad bosses, bad role models. But are they really bad? Okay, and so then there's again this lens of, is it a blessing or a curse? And then I have this kind of framework here, and here we have make space. And so I can connect the making space already to that. And a structure starts to emerge from this. Then I go up to the coming out and positive role models. I can go faster here, I think, because you kind of understood it. So coming out, and I have coming out as a decision. It's a wonderful decision. It's the most powerful decision. And so you can go up here. Then you need to go down, and I have, let's say, the burnout story. And in the burnout story, I didn't highlight it as much while I was talking, but in the burnout story, the interesting thing is that here I had limited agency in these stories. Here I start to have agency because I'm an entrepreneur. And here I get learning on the letting go, on the making space, and on the decide scale. And so it kind of starts breathing more. There's larger learning. And at that point, in this case, the structure is slightly simpler. At that point, I'm ready to tell you, well, the story that you're here to hear. And that kind of brings everything together. Emotionally, and I hope also rationally, you have to tell me if that kind of came well together or if it was still disjointed, because it was, to me, it's very clear that that is a story, that is the story about letting go, making space for something else, for the people that are not here but are here, and for a decision to lead the family and say, okay, we're doing it. We haven't done it 30 years ago. We got to do the funeral now. And at that point, you need to end as quickly as possible, okay? Because you're on a high. And your ego will tell, okay, so you made them cry. You have them sitting here. It's a factory event. You're only like 40 minutes in. Why don't I ramble? I got them captive. Why don't I go long? Instead, that is the moment. You have the high. Set them free. How do you set people free? You give them what I call a summary, but in the storytelling terms, in the movies, for instance, in the Lord of the Rings, there's the hawks take the Fellowship of the Ring and they bring it back to the Shire, right? And they see all of the landscape, all of the mines, all of the mountains from above. And the idea is that in the ending, you're zooming out, you're making the picture wider and wider and wider so that you tell your audience, hey, look, we just met, but this is the ground that we covered. And so it's not a summary, it's a kind of an exciting moment where you bring all the threads together. And if you want, at that point, you can give them something to do or not. But basically, well, what I did I liked the idea of symmetry here. So there is the Zen version of the story. Is it a blessing or a curse? Or be careful how you see the world. It is like that. It's actually the same thing. They're completely interchangeable. I could end the presentation with the Zen story about the horse, or I can end it like I did. I kind of like the more kind of intellectual thing that grounds us at the beginning and the more story thing that let us imagine things. But who's to choose. So basically, this beginning and this ending are a mirror, and in between them, there's just a high point. If you play the high point of the story right, and you end quickly, you have it. And at one point of this presentation, I had only this. Okay, I had this. I knew, I reviewed all the stories, like, this is the most powerful story. So I had this, and then I built the rest. Once you know how you're ending, the rest kind of figures itself out. It's also a question of doing it a million times. You get a little bit better. And if you can, well, what I did here with this is that I took a complicated framework that is very perfect to observe a story. So I can, and it's actually quite fun to train the language model to say, evaluate the story based on the 17 steps of the hero's journey. And I did it for this talk, actually. Every time I did a rehearsal, I also fed it to the LLM, and I had it spit back, how do you think this went, etc. I can show you the graphs. It's quite, Claude can also map the engagement level of the talk. I'm actually going to show it to you in a second. But it's not very useful if I tell you, now tell the story of your life in 17 heroic steps. Where do you even start? Instead, if I tell you, you basically elevate the stakes at the beginning. Give me some problems to chew on, okay? Because nobody wants to hear about a story where everything goes well. Be clear about what's your big idea and end really quickly. You have a blueprint. You have something you can do.